All right, welcome. In accordance with provisions of MGL Chapter 38, Section 20, notice is hereby given that the planning board will meet on Monday, October 27th, 2025 at 7 p.m. Members of the public are welcome to attend this remote-only meeting by the Zoom connection provided below. Alternative to Zoom, we also will be streaming on the NCTV live stream, and any recordings can be watched via their YouTube channel link, which is also provided. Since this is a remote meeting, we will be doing a roll call vote and roll call attendance to begin. So I'm going to start off with Melissa Mayo,
Here.
Gary Sullivan,
Here.
Dan Seeger,
Present.
and I'm Chris Monfort, and we also have Richard McCarthy joining us as our town planner. So Rich, we have 10 MacArthur Avenue, a vote to release of the covenant and deed approval.
Yes. I'll get to that in a second. But before I do, I want to appreciate the timeliness of the board to be able to convene this remote meeting to take care of this matter and a couple other ones. I appreciate you being extremely flexible, so thank you. So in terms of 10 MacArthur Ave, the property is under agreement, Franz Burke, to sell it to two individuals for their new home. As part of the approval for 10 MacArthur Ave, you need to release it from the covenant, which was that when it was to be conveyed out, there was to be a permanent perpetual easement over it. Do you want me to share it from the share drive, or I don't know if the board wants? I could do that. Might be
That would be great.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
All right, so I'll do that. Hold on a second.
I also have it if you want me to put it up, but you'd have to give me rights.
I think I have it here. Let's see. Yes. So this probably predates maybe just Dan. I don't know. I know, Dan, you were definitely not involved with this. I think everyone else was involved with the approval. So 10 MacArthur Ave, just for context, was a roadway improvement plan. You voted the last meeting to recommend the Hammerhead to be accepted as town meeting as a public way. The select board voted that as well at their last meeting on October 20th. And now Franz Burke, who's the owner of the home, has a person two individuals to purchase the home. And let me get to the meat of it. No, this is the release. Hold on. Pause. I'm gonna get you the deed, actually. So hold on. Boom. All right. So here we are. That first document share will be the covenant release, which we'll need to vote on. And then this is scheduled for a closing on Wednesday. So hopefully I could at least get 3 members to stop by before, tomorrow, hopefully. I'm not sure we'll get a question in a moment when the closing is, but maybe have a little bit of time on Wednesday. But in regards, here's the deed description of the property. And then the substantive matter, which why you're approving it, is the language right down here. Did I get past it? No, I think I zoomed past it. Sorry.
It's the third paragraph from the bottom, Mr. McCarthy.
Third paragraph from the bottom. That would be helpful. I can. Third paragraph.
This conveyance is made subject to, it starts with.
You just scroll, it's up. Go up. This page here, third paragraph up. This conveyance is made Made subject
Oh,
to
yeah,
the
right there.
covenant. Yeah.
Yes.
Stop.
Did I go too far?
Yeah. It's like the bottom of. I feel like I want to take the mouse away from you.
You probably do.
Where'd you go?
It's
While
the
you're looking
bottom
for
of
that, I
this
do want to
page.
welcome Gary Searle, who's just joined us as well.
Yeah, why isn't that jumping out of me? Zoom past it?
Yeah, it's
You
down.
Oh, there it is. All right, yeah, I'm sorry, right here. This conveyance is made subject to the perpetual covenant that no further subdivision of any portion of land shown in said plan shall be permitted. Where my cursor is right there. That's the important part,
Okay.
because that was part of the covenant. That needs to be. That was part of the one of the conditions of the covenant. Part of the approval.
Okay.
Everything else is pretty much standard in terms of the typical language you would see in the deed. So to make it simple, if the board is okay, make a motion to approve that deed is what I'd be asking for.
Any questions from the board or anyone on the line?
No, pretty straightforward.
Okay.
All right, so then I'll be looking for a motion to release the covenant and deed approval for 10 MacArthur Avenue.
So moved.
Do you have a second?
A second.
All right, we'll do roll call vote. Mr. Sullivan,
Aye.
Mr. Seeger,
Aye.
Mr. Searle,
Aye.
Ms. Mayo,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye.
Fantastic.
Congratulations, Mr. Burke, on finishing this project and having your new buyers.
Yes,
Took a while.
congrats.
Now, would I be optimistic? Say I could get 3 of you at least to come in by tomorrow.
I
I
can
can
come by
come in
tomorrow.
tomorrow.
That's the problem.
I can guarantee you I'll be down there tonight signing it.
You
All
said
right.
tonight.
Well, you don't have to come tonight since
I stopped by you earlier. You were busy.
yeah, you stopped by a little bit too early. But anyway, tomorrow would be great. Stop by again tomorrow. Super. That'd be great.
Tomorrow.
Thank
oh
you.
My gosh. I'm looking at my calendar thinking today's Tuesday because we usually have meetings on Tuesday. But yes, I can come in tomorrow and sign too.
Okay. Super. All right. All right. Excellent. So then want to
Where do
go
you
to
wanna
the
go
next
next?
item on. Oh, sorry.
Where do you want to go next? Do you want to do the advisory committee? You want to go to H. Aaron's, 360 Main?
Well, I can tell you in terms of the agenda. So 360 Main is all set. You will. There is no need for administrative approval from the planning board. So.
Yeah, they
no
decided
act-
not to go ahead with that additional lane.
No, they actually didn't need that whole additional row of
Okay.
panels. They're adjusting the panels within what was previously approved by the board.
Okay.
And that'll be reflected on the as-built plan once the project's done, which will be filed with the building department and our land use office. So we can
Perfect.
skip to that one. Yeah, might as well just, if you don't mind, let's tackle 8 Sharon Ave. And that makes sense because that's
Sure.
pretty straightforward.
All right, so discuss and vote on the insubstantial change to the earth removal permit.
Yeah, so I think, quite honestly, I think it was a Scribner's error, so to speak, taking a earth removal permit from a previous project and using that to do the earth removal permit for 8 Sharon Ave because the applicant had requested removal of material. It wasn't just stockpiling material on site, removal of 6,300 cubic yards of material. I have that in the did you see that? I can share that in the share drive if you want, but just the application, the way it was originally submitted, they did want to remove material. So the ask is to modify the permit to be able to remove the material. Are you You want me to share that, or are you seeing
Yeah,
that in the share?
Go ahead.
Okay. Inform. So what you see on the screen,
Yeah.
number 5.
Striking out none. You're adding and removing or.
Yep.
Okay.
That's part 1, and then there's a question that the applicant did want to ask the board. So Twin Towers Realty Trust, the Garopoulos, Bill and Chris. Chris is before you right now for 50 Fruit Street for the single family home. He would like to take the gravel that's coming out of this site, 8 Sharon Ave, and stockpile it over at 50 Fruit Street because he's going to use the gravel as part of the home construction and the septic system. So I wanted to ask the board informally if he were to do that to bring the material. He can't do anything yet, but just to bring it over there, he still would need the earth removal permit. Excuse me, not the earth removal permit, the stormwater permit from the board yet, but just to be able to move the material from this site to that one.
Yeah, he already owns the single family property, right? So he'd just be putting it on his own land.
That's correct. He owns that. He
Yeah.
does.
I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever brought in that material to your projects or your yard before. It is extremely expensive.
Yeah.
So if he could, that would, I'm sure, save him a lot of money aside from, the cost to move it over.
Yeah, I have no
Exactly.
problems.
Okay. All right.
Anybody have any concerns?
Nope.
Okay.
Okay.
Then I would ask the board then to approve the minor change to the earth removal permit for 6 Sharon Ave. You want me to put it back on the screen, or you remember it?
Sorry, did you say 6 or 8 Sharon's Ave?
Yeah,
Should be 8.
I did say 6, but it's not 6. It's 8. Thank
Okay.
you.
All
Good
right,
catch.
so looking for a vote to approve the insubstantial change to the earth removal permit for 8 Sharon's Avenue.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, roll call vote.
Yep.
Let's start from the top. Ms. Mayo,
Aye.
Mr. Searle,
Aye.
Mr. Sullivan,
Aye.
Mr. Seeger,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. So now moving to the discussion relative to the 2 zoning articles proposed by the planning board. The advisory board ended up by vote IPing both articles. There was, at least it appeared, there might have been a vote favorably on the the recreational vehicle, which is Article 13 on the warrant. But due to connectivity signal, that person dropped off, so it ended up being a 3-3 vote. So by virtue of the vote, it ends up not being approved. Now, I did watch the deliberations for the advisory committee on this, and I think there was really more, in some ways, not understanding how this would work in terms of its operation. They were concerned more if somebody had a recreational vehicle on their property that they owned, and then the kids were in and out of it and playing there, that now that would make it subject to this bylaw, which is not the intent and purpose of this change to the zoning bylaw. The purpose of this is in circumstances where somebody was doing substantial changes to their home, which they had and they wanted to live temporarily in the recreational vehicle parked on their property, they could do it under a building permit. And that's really the key piece of this, is that this is tied to a building permit, not just somebody using a recreational vehicle on their property. Now, I suppose if somebody was living in an RV on somebody's property and it became, a nuisance to the neighborhood, that's a whole separate matter, which is not subject to this change. That may be an issue where they may, in fact, be subject to a zoning violation, but it's not to weigh in on those. It wouldn't apply to those circumstances. So,
Hey, Rich, I watched that advisory meeting and I thought about that a lot. I think it's pretty simple, right? Like if somebody has an RV on their property and they want to let their kids play in it, that's their choice, right? I think we all probably did that. If you had campers growing up, that's what kids do. Fine. That's not for the town to actually handle. That's for the parents of those children. However, I understand that there was a concern, how would we know if there was an actual permit versus there's people just living in an RV. And anytime that you have a permit, you have to have it front and center, visible on the front of your house in a window. So if it doesn't have that, then you know that it could be a concern and you can call the town. If it does have that, then they're following the rules and not even Bob anymore, but the building commissioner is managing it.
agree. Yes.
Yes, agree.
So where we're at now, what I'm essentially asking the board is to be able to submit a motion to town meeting floor, which would be to vote on this article as printed. Jay, at the moderators meeting last week, said that if the planning board wanted to move this forward, that he would work with myself, the board, and Carol to draft the motion in terms. Now that motion wouldn't happen until town meeting, but at least to have the language prepared in advance, so it would be seamless. So for tonight, if there is interest, hopefully the board to be able to move forward for a substitute motion. That's really, in essence, what I'm asking the board tonight regarding this one.
Yeah, I think it made sense for us to continue. We've put the work in. We've had instances where this would have been helpful, and I don't see any issue, honestly, discussing it at the town meeting if we need to provide more information and, asking the town to vote on it.
I think there was the audio at NCTV for the meetings isn't amazing, so I was trying to hear it all, but I think there was they kind of got caught up on the definition of occupancy. Does that sound right, Gary and Rich? You were in the meeting room, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
But I just don't think it's relevant. If you have a permit in your window saying that you have a right to have that, right? Then what is the occupancy definition? I didn't quite understand how that had anything to do with it. If it's going through the permitting process, therefore it would be triggered to all of the other, you know, regulatory bodies. Why are we caught on that definition? And I don't mean to sound flippant. I really just could not figure it out.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I similarly, the sound got a little tough there and I couldn't fully make out some of the conversation, but it seemed to me like that they really just didn't maybe understand that this was only relevant in the case that a building permit had been issued. And I mean, the vote actually got a little chaotic. If you watch that, I'm not sure people fully understood at that time whether they were voting on approval or an IP. So I agree with getting the motion and moving forward with this in town meeting.
Peter Diamond raised his hand.
Hi, through the chair, if I may, Chris, Peter Diamond.
Yes, go ahead.
Peter Diamond, Seekonk Street, Norfolk. I think there's a piece missing in this draft language for the recreational vehicle, that the piece that's in the general bylaw that these trailers should not be placed in the front yard. And we don't have that language in this bylaw drafted as written. And I think that piece would be important, that these temporary trailers, while construction's going on in the yard, not be placed in the front yard. And we're going into the winter now. I don't see the rush to push it through at the fall town meeting. I think send it back to and work on it through the winter and bring it forward in the spring. Thank you.
I think you bring up an interesting point, but I don't know that we necessarily want to designate where it can and can't be set up if it has to do with the house being fixed, right? It might be the best place for it to be placed so that it's not in the way of other construction vehicles or materials. And so I don't know that we necessarily want to put any limits on where it should be located. Additionally, proximity to power, water, other items that they're going to need access to, as well as sewage removal, right? They're going to have someone come on site to remove sewage from their black tanks. Speaking from experience, I have a travel trailer, right? And so these are the things that you have to worry about when you're on campsites. And so similarly, you're going to have to worry about that when you're on your property. And you don't want to have to kind of limit that from my perspective. I wouldn't want to be told where on the property it should be if it's because I'm dealing with a disaster that just happened on my property and this is the best place for it to be. I am open to others' thoughts.
I think logistically that makes perfect sense. From, working on a lot of different construction sites, I think I agree with you that logistically you need to be close to the sewer. You need to make sure that the trucks and, whoever you have coming in from a construction perspective can use your driveway. You don't want them driving on your front yard, especially not if you have a curb and a sidewalk, because people complain about that as well, obviously, when commercial vehicles are driving over it. Logistically, I think it's going to matter, certainly the situation with the house specifically, how the house is situated, where the driveway is, where all of the utilities are. It's temporary, and I can't imagine we're going to have many of them, considering that there's restrictions and it's tied to a building permit. I don't see the point in being overly restrictive with that when we know it's going to be temporary.
So is the board comfortable then to move forward with a substitute motion for this article for the November 12th town meeting,
Yes.
subject to review with town council, the moderator, and town clerk?
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know how much more work, like, I did hear that too, does it need to go now? But I guess my question is, why not now? There isn't really more work to be done on it. We've worked on it for a long time. I don't see the point in pushing it out 6 more months instead of getting it done now so we can move on to something else that we have
Yeah.
on our priority.
Especially since the summer or the spring meeting tends to be more budget focused, and we always get pushback whenever we put anything that's not budget focused on the
That's true.
agenda
They
for
usually
that.
tell us zoning needs to be in the fall, so.
Right. So I'm good to move forward with the recommendation to, how do you want me to word this, Rich?
Submit a substitute motion to town meeting to bring Article 13 to town meeting floor as printed.
Looking for a motion to bring a substitute motion for Article 13 to our November town meeting as written.
So moved.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Seeger,
Aye.
Mr. Searle,
Aye.
Ms. Mayo,
Aye.
Mr. Sullivan,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye.
All right.
That's
Thank
Article
you.
13 for you, Rich. What's next?
So next is Article 14.
Okay.
So I know some of you've already talked about that. You got a chance to listen to the deliberations of the advisory board on the changes to the inclusionary bylaw. I think one comment was in terms of this had gone before town council and was reviewed by town council, and the language that you vote on at the previous meeting was language that gone through that process and review. So it certainly was reviewed by town council. That doesn't mean that they certainly can't have comments on it. And to that point, I'm going to share the screen again just to go over potential. So this one, similarly, I'd be asking the board to do a substitute motion, but in this case, with potentially some modifications. So the first one being to strike out a minimum of, and so it shall be 350,000. So it's clear that that's the payment in lieu amount. As you probably heard, the question was like, well, it says shall be a minimum, so that lends itself to being a number that might increase over time. We did talk about before that obviously with a set amount, we're going to have to constantly,
Right.
revisit. So that's the first one, and then I'll go through each one, then we can go back if you don't mind. Do it that way.
It's fine.
Then the second one was in relation to allowing the payment in lieu for rental. That was something that was suggested from MAPC, really looking at the B1 zoning. And since there isn't any B1 changes on for November, I don't think it would be harmful in any way to just keep the payment in lieu for the moment for ownership units. The way things lay out, the only area in terms of where you might see rental units at this point is the B1 district, because Pondville, the C1D district, which does have multifamily, it's completely within the MBTA overlay district. So the probably, somebody's going to go as an MBTA multifamily project there, which has its own set of criteria outside of the general inclusionary bylaw, which is they have to provide the affordable units. There is no buyout option. So in reality, this really is focused around the B1. So if we were to strike that for now and come back with B1 changes, I think that would be fine, and it would be a change that really has no material issue at this point. And the last one was related to which I'll scroll up, just of the change to back to 10% across the board versus having some kind of scaling provision. So we talked about this before, but just to kind of recap it, the going back to 10% sets the way it was prior to the citizen petition in 2021. And we got to this point based on looking at the economics of providing affordable housing through the inclusionary bylaw, that in instances where it's an open space subdivision, if it was at 10%, you get a bonus for open space. So it essentially washes itself out from a economic standpoint. The research that I know the board did on its own and through the B1 and so forth, that going above 10% not singly, but when you look at all the different components to whether a subdivision is feasible or not, and we're talking about subdivisions in this case, that percent of the affordable amount does play a factor in those numbers. And we have seen that people making those decisions. In fact, we talked about before, using Cranberry Meadow as an example, that, everything being equal, 20% changed the economics significantly. And so the thought was to go back to 10%. If we want to increase more affordable housing beyond that 10%, then we need to look at what was talked about in the housing production plan, which was to look at, we do it by bonuses system. We don't have that in place right now. So the thought is to do a reset. We look at how we could maybe go about doing bonuses and bring that forward at a future town meeting. And why now doing this? Because where we sit right now, we're not a safe harbor. And anytime we're at this point in time, we are open to potential seeing a scaled up 40B come in. And so if we opportunity to maybe prevent that, have the development go in a different direction, I think that's in the greater interest of the town versus adding a higher percent of affordable beyond 10 right now. So I'm not suggesting that we don't look at it. It's just keep it at 10 for now, and then we have to continue to look at that issue in terms of the amount of affordable housing. And I did include in the share drive a spreadsheet I can share if you want, which shows different percents and the numbers. If that's helpful to the discussion.
Sure.
Yeah, bring it up.
To just for reference, the rounding up is staying so there is no removal of rounding, which didn't exist prior to 21. So the highlighted column here, the 4 columns, is showing you the rounding up effect. This is the present one in terms of the tiered system that we have, which starts at 10, then shifts to 15, then it goes up to 20%. This column, the next one over, is just straight out 10%. This one here is just illustrative. If you increase a little bit more than 10%, which would be 12.5%, you would see the effect of what that would look like. And then the last column is one that Peter talked about before the planning board the last time, and I mentioned at the advisory, which was a 10, 12%, 15%. So it shows you what that looks like for comparison purposes. So,
Do any towns do anything with the part that doesn't round up? Like if you had 0.4, so you're not rounding it up, do they convert that to an in lieu of payment?
yeah, we actually have that in our bylaw as well.
That is in our bylaw.
That is in a bylaw, yeah.
Oh.
I can,
No, it's okay.
yeah, if you look under.
So you're there, no matter what the decimal is, they're making a payment or rounding up. Is that what you're saying?
So this isn't just payment. This is across the board, the amount of affordable
Yeah, I
housing.
know, but you can't round up a 0.3 or a 0.2 house. I'm just asking if other towns were getting any benefit from when it's not at 0.5 or above.
So in those instances, you could get that fractional piece up to 0.4 as a cash payment.
Yeah. Do we do
So
that?
you can, yeah, because it's the way the bylaw is written. You can apply a combination of ways to create the affordable
Okay.
housing. So for instance, if you had whatever one you want to look at,
I just don't recall a partial payment of that type in the past, but that's why I'm asking.
yeah. You want me to?
No, it's all right. It's already in the
Yeah.
bylaw, you're saying.
Yeah, no, it is already in
Okay.
there.
And you can just tell Gary to stop talking anytime you want.
No, it's a good question. I mean, so it does exist,
Okay.
but this is more so about where how we figure out how much of the affordable.
Yeah.
So what are well, anybody on the board have any additional comments? If not, I'll open the floor to Peter Diamond.
I've got a couple of questions on the new language, but I don't know if you want those now or you want to wait until after Mr. Diamond speaks.
We'll wait.
I also have Sue too on the line.
Okay. All right,
But-
Mr. Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the rounding up, I did capture that from my research for my petition in 2021, and there are area towns that have that. I know we have not used that yet, but it is in the bylaw. And that pertains to any of the subdivisions or development around town, but not including the MBTA overlay areas. So there's no rounding up or capturing fractions below 0.5 for the MBTA. For example, we have a couple of projects in B1, the MBTA overlay. One is at 15 Rockwood Road, which I think will be 13 units. So there'll be one there, one affordable through the MBTA 10%. And the other one, currently there's one on Union Street, proposal for possibly 18 units over there, where there would only be one unit at 10%, and the other 8, we don't get any benefit from that. So there'd be a total, in that case, of 13 and 18, so 31 units going in the B1. And when you do the numbers, that's only 6 or 7% of affordable units. So that kind of goes against our progress towards 10% each time that happens. And that's why I drafted this scaled percentage, to not to bring us to 10%, but in an effort to keep us at an even pace at 10%. In some cases, the scaled would benefit. I see the scale back to 10% as just going back to before 2021, when I submitted my petition to change this in an effort to keep pace with 10%. So I think some of the moves being made here will go into the 2030 census at 5% or less of affordable units in our town. So I think we'll be subject to 40B development in Norfolk through 2040 and maybe beyond. So I would ask the board to reconsider the 10% and give thought to maybe a 10, 12, 15%, like Rich has there in that last column. The other piece is, right, in the housing production plan, it talks about incentivizing development to gain more affordable units. So I think, once again, I'll end with, I think we should push this till the spring when you're working on the B1 and everything else, and bring it all together in one proposal instead of moving forward here with an article that is kind of short of what I think we all really want. Thank you.
All right, any comments about what Mr. Diamond said? If not, Dan, I'll welcome your comments on the wording.
Yeah, and I said questions. It's really just one question, but Rich, can you explain? And I just couldn't really pick this up from the sound and stuff in the meeting. What the actual issue was around the 350 and the word minimum, and why they had an issue with that?
What I gathered from it was that it was, it was going to be challenged by the Attorney General. That it wasn't set in terms of, because it said a minimum, it could scale up, and they cited a bunch of towns that, which I haven't been able to confirm, but that the AG rejected language that was similar to that, which was confusing to me. So that was in fact, town council I talked about that a minimum was 350. They didn't see it as interpreted that way, that so tight. But so my thought was, all right, well, if you think that's the case, then just remove a minimum, and would set it at that number, so it can't be higher than 350,000 in terms of the buyout payment. I mean, the irony of it is right now we're sitting at over $500,000. So the AG, I mean, if you look at the present formula, I would think you would, not that that's going to be, well, actually I shouldn't say that. Anytime you present a bylaw before the AG, you're kind of opening yourself up, I suppose, but was much higher than that amount. And I did look at a couple other towns that was cited. I don't know. They mentioned the Cape, Sudbury, I think it was Mashpee, and they have a moving formula as well. So I wasn't quite sure I followed that, honestly, Dan, the discussion on that. But in any event, I thought that if we struck those two words, that would certainly address the general concern they were talking about.
I was trying to make sense of that too. It was more about language. I thought what they were trying to get to was kind of like what Chris had brought up originally, and Dan as well. Are we going to have some sort of table in there? But then it became more about language and not about the numbers. So I didn't quite follow that either. But I think, what we were trying to do is not have to keep taking up time on town meeting floor to request changes for these bylaws, right? That's why we wanted to have that language in there. If they're not happy with it, or if others or the AG wouldn't be happy with it, we could just say 350, and then we'll just have to come back to them again when market conditions change and the values go up. We were just trying to make it, not clog up town meeting by having that language a little bit looser.
Exactly.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, that's sort of my point. I don't really understand what issue the language causes, nor do I really understand what it solves by taking it out. But I agree. I think the only thing that's going to serve to do is, keep us busy at multiple town meetings in the future.
So, I mean, what's the risk, really? Like, if we just go with it as printed, similar to with what we're doing with Article 13, let's say the town approves it, the AG pushes back, we have to edit and Do it again.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm
you certainly
fine.
you can certainly keep it as is and make the pitch, right?
Yeah, I'm fine with making the pitch and pushing forward. And if AG pushes back, we just do it again. Because guess what? We're gonna have to do it again and again and again and again anyway. If they don't like what we want to do anyway.
Right.
Yeah, I've got a little bit of a more global question to pose on this, but so far as the language here, I agree. I don't think that we, really have a policy or legal reason in front of us to strike those words if we're going to move forward with it. My
I
my
like to hear the
more
global. Yeah.
yeah, so my more global question on this, interested in what folks think is, are we set because this has now been IP'd by the advisory committee? Are we setting and we're going to have to go in and try to further explain this and make some of these additional last minute changes on the rental units? Are we setting ourselves up for failure a little bit? And or is that fine? We're comfortable with the fact that we may well propose this in the fall town meeting, and the community will hear it, make their choice on it, and we may be back in the spring with another iteration of it. I'm trying to think through, like, is it better to address some of these changes and get buy-in from the advisory committee in the future and then take one to the town meeting that they can back? Or is it better to, move forward with this, understand that we've got to kind of explain our way around that IP vote. And in a worst case scenario, we've made the citizens aware that this is something that we're trying to update.
So the decision really to move forward now in some ways was to be able to space out between this and the B1 changes because those are certainly going to be a lot more nuanced and to try to explain to so you when you have sometimes when you sit before a town meeting you might have too many things and then you don't get anything because people get confused, so it's kind of more of a bigger question in terms of process more so than anything else because it could be a little bit unwieldy at town. You never know. I mean, it's hard to predict, but
You know what, though?
that
In past town meetings, if there was, a member of advisory who didn't vote to move something forward, but ultimately it moved forward, because it had the majority, that person has not had a problem, and nor should they, standing up saying why they voted against it, right? So I feel like it's not really much different than that, except that, IP, first of all, who even knows I know what that means? You guys all know what that means? I mean, I didn't when I first started going to town meeting. Like I was like, IP, what are they talking about? Like I don't know that most people know that lingo anyway. Um, but I think really like we've had that challenge before. I mean, I've had it personally going back and forth with one of the advisory members who I have a ton of respect for, on town meeting floor. And it was fine and it still went through. It was just, we just needed to explain why it should.
I feel like we're in a similar position now. I think, we push forward with this. I think we have a strong case for why it should move forward. Um, I don't see why we should stop and kind of make any changes either. I think the language that we have in there is solid. And I would like to, have us kind of present that solid kind of unified front. We've been doing this for a while. We've identified the changes that we want to make, and we're really, confident in our decision. And I think that will shine at the town meeting, and I think it made sense for us to just push forward.
Chris, just to be clear, so do you mean that we would not move forward with these suggested changes around the rental units? We just keep it clean?
I think we should, yeah.
I do have, so I think that one I was thinking about, and I'm curious to get Sue's thoughts on that because I can't think of a reason why we shouldn't do that except Mr. Diamond said it, I believe it was at advisory, we really do need some rental units in Norfolk, and are we working against ourselves by not having that. But aside from that, I can't think of any other reason. So Sue, if you could jump in there and just let us know what your thoughts are.
Sure. So when Rich and I did some additional research, we went back and looked at the MAPC information. And when they spoke to the rental units, the payment in lieu of for rental units, it specifically outlined 6 to 12 units offering a payment in lieu of. And obviously that's because of the size of the particular whatever that developer's doing. It's small enough that you know, it potentially could be helpful for them to be able to buy out of the affordable unit. But it certainly isn't meant for, let's say that the developer up on the property off of 115 was going to do 200 units. He's not going to buy out 50 affordable units at $350,000. So this is it's really a mute point for those larger developments. So the reason that we felt, Rich and I chatted, and we felt that, maybe making the language change and indicating that, after doing some additional research, this is really something that's meant for smaller units, and there's some additional work that this board's working on for the spring for the B1 district. I attended the meeting. I felt like the advisory board just kind of wanted everything all packaged up, come back to us in the fall. But this is something that I feel like this board has spent a tremendous amount of time investigating, listening, learning. The Affordable Housing Trust has spent a tremendous amount of time listening, learning, investigating. And while I think it's always better to have the support of the advisory board going forward, I think we felt like if this was a minor tweak of the 350, and it would be helpful, then maybe we could make that minor tweak and have it be helpful. It's very it's what you guys do and the amount of work that goes into understanding all of the bylaws, even as an employee. I come to these meetings and I learn every single time I'm in a meeting, and Rich is a wonderful teacher. It's really can be somewhat frustrating to go before a board, that they, through no fault of their own, they're volunteers. It's a finance committee. I'm not speaking out of turn, but there's so much minutia in all of these zoning bylaws that to really get 7 folks to kind of be on board with changes that there's a lot of material on has been I will say been more difficult the last few years.
I was wondering, and I don't want to get sidetracked, but I was kind of thinking, we go back and forth with these conversations all the time. Sometimes it's, over several meetings. I'm just wondering if when we go to town meeting, we usually have a packaged up presentation to share with the residents of town so they know what they're voting on. Maybe we should try to pull that timeline in so we can have that same thing for advisory to kind of package that up for them. Because we have so much conversation back and forth, on our own board, and then we go there and it's kind of more conversational with them, and I feel like that might be confusing versus showing just a visual like we do with residents to show the progress or the proposal or anything that we have visually.
Yeah, I think it would also be helpful, like you have members of this board that attend that board meeting. Typically, there's always a representative from the planning board. I think around town meeting time, especially, and when we're having these conversations, when your board is working on these items, I think it would be really helpful if they had a member attend the planning board meetings. Because it's a lot to try to decipher and explain to folks, and you do the best you can. The only other thought that I had, and Rich and I have had a lot of conversation surrounding this in the last week or so, is, do we, and I understand we all have talked about it and we think 10% is the number, but do we look for a compromise of a 12.5% on the percentage of affordable housing so that we're successful in, if that brings us success, but it's more of a compromise? Or do you hold firm in the 10% because that's truly what the board and the trust feels is the way to move forward? I have some concerns that, keeping this, if we're not successful at town meeting with getting this changed to 10% and it stays at the sliding scale, I do have some concerns that it could bring us some pretty large projects. And I do think that we still have the opportunity to convert, or I'll give Rich the credit because he's the one on the phone with the developers all the time. We do still have the opportunity to convert that 51 or 53 home subdivision up off of Cranberry Meadow back to a 21, traditional subdivision with open space and, just a thought of mine to throw out there.
Does it seem like, I know I've seen MAPC's, obviously we've all seen MAPC's data. 12 and a half, I mean, 20 is obviously way too much. 15 is, it depends, right? But it still seems a little high. 12 and a half, do we know, like Rich, talking to these developers, do you have a sense of, how they feel about that? I mean, it's not that much more.
Well, I think I have a much better shot at trying to convince somebody at 2.5%. And looking at the numbers on I have put it back up there. So yeah, I think it's not. I think it's worth. I think it still leaves the conversation open. I think. So, for instance, we talk about why did I not put that in there? So, well, actually, it doesn't make a difference on that development. Actually, Cranberry Heights, because it's 3 and 3 either way, whether it's 15 or 12.5%. I don't know. I mean, I want to say yes, I can make it work. It's been so the struggle with these. So well, let's just kind of talk in the big picture about that one, Cranberry Heights. It requires a significant amount of water main work because if it was, for instance, they came up and the town said, okay, you can bring up Cranberry Meadow Road or come in Eagle Drive and you don't have to loop it through and then all that, then maybe they say, okay, this is not so bad, right? But what happens, which is natural, which I completely understand from a water distribution standpoint, they don't want to see the water loop. So then you add in expense to put water main in on a street that's not directly benefiting the development per se, but you're putting in that infrastructure cost. And then similar to Wade's Crossing, for example, when they brought the water line up Lawrence Street, they put all the water connection stubs out to the curb line. So if somebody wants to tie in, there's that additional cost. So it's frankly, I would love actually, and I talked to Sue about this, I'd rather just see them do on-site private well, on-site septic, and not worry about fire protection. You have all the means to figure out fire protection, so we're not literally. I mean, that's driving higher density. It's like we're pointing. You know what I mean? We're not giving an option to essentially that fire protection piece is driving up that development costs enormously, which is adding to this whole conversation about 51 versus 21.
Right. I mean, that's what it's always going to come back to at the end of the day, right? They need the system.
Dollars. And we, and honestly, the other thing too, in some respects, if you've seen the plans for Camp Cranberry Heights, it's they're clearing the whole entire property. So it's another one of those clear it all out. It's not a well designed where you have like you're trying to work with the property to do a quality integrated into the landscape, right? To have something or you're putting in a subdivision, and at the end of the day, it's going to kind of fit in. You're not going to be driving along Park Street, looking up on the hill and see this. Whoosh. What you see today, it's just. I mean, I made these comments during the whole 40B review process. It's
not the same plans that were removed with prejudice by the two developers.
No.
It's totally different.
Well, I mean, it's essentially the same, but it's more dense. There's no open space with this thing. It's literally they cutting the whole site out in terms of the trees.
With the 40B, or if it was back when it was 21 units?
No, when it's a 40B. When it was 21
Oh,
units, there was some of the was remained. But even that wasn't beautiful either, to be honest with you, in some respects. But it's certainly it's way better than that proposed 40B. It's just
the water. They don't use underground cisterns in this area of the country, or is that ever an option here? No,
I haven't heard of that. It's not to say.
Yeah, 9,000 gallon tanks. I was building a house in New Hampshire one time, and that was an alternative. Put 3 of them underground, just for one house. But you don't really. There was nothing else near me. The lake froze up in the middle of the winter, right? So how do they put out the fire when they get there? It wouldn't be bad to put cisterns underground in locations as opposed to routing all those water lines. Just a thought. I don't know what the fire department accepts.
But again, maybe that's something that could be explored through, an open space subdivision rather than a 40B, because they're not going to be able to get. It's in the, and that's the other thing that plays a part. I believe this is in. I have to double check. I thought it was within the zone 2, not our zone 2, but within the zone 2 for Frankenwell. Don't quote me on that one. I don't want to, but never. These are. So this is what we kind of wrestle with.
So just, interest of time and everything. Curious on where everyone's mind is, right? Not an official vote, just kind of like a thought. I think we just move forward, we leave it as is. I think that's the biggest benefit that we have to this.
Mhm.
Gary, Dan, Melissa, where are your heads?
As is what, the 10%?
The 10%, yeah.
That's where it was originally, but I was surprised when Sue was commenting that you didn't think it would be acceptable because people see it as a cure-all for our problem or a benefit to our problem of not meeting the 10%, and yet it hasn't really been a benefit to us, and it could be a detriment moving forward. So I just don't know how to close that gap, get the point across that it's not that beneficial. Am I saying that correctly?
It's not, the sliding scale's not beneficial? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, well, going all the way back to just the 10, which it was before this was implemented in 2021. You're saying there was some perception that we're giving up benefit in doing that, and it might get voted down. Did I understand you correctly when you described that?
Well, we don't have the support of the advisory board. It's an IP. Again, a very difficult subject for folks that don't eat, sleep, and drink it every day, or, sit on a planning board. And so I'm in a compromising mood, Gary. I thought, maybe
Yeah.
we just, if we offered that as a compromise, but
Sure.
that I still believe we should go back to 10%, but my suggestion was really if we thought 12.5% would move us to that direction, I'd rather do that than lose it all. So I don't want to suggest that I don't think we can get the public to vote this favorably. I just was making the suggestion of a compromise.
Okay.
Yeah, I raised the question. I appreciate the opportunity to sort of pause and think through what that IP means. I'm comfortable moving forward with our original proposal. I think it makes sense. Just from a procedural standpoint, even if we did change it to 12.5 now, we wouldn't go back to the advisory committee anyway with
No.
that, right? So we'd be up against the IP issue regardless. So I think that we need, I'm okay keeping it as it is. I support that. I think we just need to be really clear when we present it, what we're up against. Like Rich, what you were just going through, like that makes me really concerned about the prospect of what you're discussing. So, I think we just need to be clear with people what we're trying to, accomplish with this and why we're doing it and what it really means for the town, in the next months and years.
Do we know who's going to present this from your board?
We haven't discussed that.
Okay.
Yeah.
November 10th, right? Probably should have that on the agenda.
Yeah,
November
November
10th?
10th, I won't be at that meeting, remember?
Thought it was the 12th.
That's
The
town
meeting is on
meeting.
the 12th. Yeah, the town meeting's on the 12th. Our meeting is on the 10th, right before it.
Oh,
Right.
did we figure this out tonight then? That's basically, that's 2 days, not even 2 days to.
Sure, figure it out. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
thinking if there's this much conversation at advisory and on our meeting, what do we need to explain? Do we need visuals? Do we need,
So
a couple
let's
slides?
put that in
Everything.
the
We need everything.
unanticipated new business section of the meeting, and let's close out this piece first. Gary, you gave a thumbs up. Any additional comment you want to make?
No, I supported the initial and, I understand the conversation and appreciate the conversation, understand Mr. Diamond's points. We hired MAPC to create that matrix, and this is kind of where the numbers, landed. So that's why they're here, and I think we can explain that.
Awesome. Melissa?
Yeah, kind of similar to Gary. I mean, I had gone through and done my own financial analysis of this before, knowing, developers, that's typically that's what they're looking at, first and foremost. It's time, money, what projects will bring me less headaches, it's very simple. So I had put together a spreadsheet, a while back now, a year or two ago. So I saw the financial impact for myself. And I also think, when we went out to MAPC, I kind of thought, I think I said to you guys, like, do we really need to do that? Like, we already know the financial impact. But then they went out and did way more than I did. I was using averages and median income and median prices and stuff, median prices. But then when MAPC went out and actually interviewed the developers to get more in-depth information, I thought that was really helpful. They did actually end up proving essentially what we thought. But I think it was good to have that third-party validation and with specific conversations with multiple developers to kind of prove our theory here. So I think I agree we should move forward with the 10% based on the feedback the research and the feedback that we've received.
Awesome. All right. Hearing that, then, if we have no additional comments, I would love to get a motion to move forward with the warrant item number 14 for the adjustment to the affordable housing unit pricing, as well as the what do you call it? The affordable unit sliding scale at 10% as written in the warrant article for our November special fall town meeting.
Inclusionary zoning bylaw.
Inclusionary zoning bylaw. Thank you.
So you, just to sum it up, Chris, are you just a substitute motion to be to go as printed? No change.
Substitute motion would be as written.
Okay. All right. So I just want to. Is there a?
Do I have a second? Or do I have a motion?
So
Yeah.
moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we'll start off with you, Ms. Mayo.
Aye.
Mr. Searle.
Aye.
Mr. Seeger.
Aye.
Mr. Sullivan.
Aye.
And I vote aye.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Sue. Really appreciate the time.
All right. So the
All right.
unanticipated business.
Well, any other town planner updates, Rich?
No, but we need to figure out who's going to do what for town meeting. So
I'm
Yeah,
willing to present
absolutely.
whatever. I've thrown myself up there and gotten hanged for it before, so.
But you've always done great, Gary.
Yeah, so I will be back the night of the 11th. I'm happy to join the meeting and be there to assist in presenting. But obviously I'll have to watch the meeting from the 10th prior to that so that I have all the context of what's gone through. I don't think I have enough time to put together slides or anything like that. I'm happy to try and put eyes on something if somebody wants to put something together and send it across for commentary, but from a bandwidth perspective, I'm a little tight right now.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to drive it, and I just can a subset of us work to, or I don't know.
yeah,
I can come
two-
up with stuff and work with
two-
Rich and then throw it out, and then but we can't talk about it until the 10th, so that's.
No, well, two of us can, right? Two of us
two-
could work on it.
Yeah, two of you can.
Oh, okay, cool.
I'll work on it with you, Gary, if you want.
Okay.
Awesome.
We'll figure it out who's going to do what.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
We'll give you whichever one's going to be the most complex, Chris. Be like, here you go. Here are your slides, sir.
That's fine. I will fake it till I make it.
Awesome. All right. Well, then I think that's it for this evening.
Awesome. Perfect. So then I am looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Mr. Searle,
Aye.
Mr. Sullivan,
Aye.
Ms. Mayo,
Aye.
Mr. Seeger,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.